So I was browsing YouTube a couple weeks back, like I usually do when procrastinating working on a video, and I stumbled across something that sounded pretty cool. The Fallout Classic Edition mod pack. Now me personally, I'm not too big of a fan of mod packs just due to very personal and very elitist opinions, but this one sounded cool. I checked it out and oh. Now, nothing against the person who made this list or any of the ones mentioned in this video, but damn, it kind of feels like all of these look exactly the same. If I were to put up a screenshot with each one being from different mod packs, would you be able to tell which is which? A lot of this comes from them sharing the same visual overhaul, that being Salvo, and there's nothing wrong with using it. It's honestly great, and it's what I use as a base before slapping a few more visual mods on top of it. It's a really well put together, consistent feeling visual setup for New Vegas that's relatively easy to follow, and is only going to be made even easier once Salvo 2 releases. But it does basically mean that every mod pack looks identical now. But this classic mod pack really hit differently for me. It was just like a wave of sadness, I guess, because it's a really cool concept. So, I decided to do it again. I have lured you all into yet another New Vegas demake video. But this one is different to that one. With all the news of a New Vegas remaster, I sort of wanted to do, well, the complete opposite. To do so, we did have to download some rather old mods, but I think overall it turned out pretty well. Not only are we making the game look as though it released a whole console generation early, but we're going to be taking inspiration from the classic games for the architecture, weaponry, clothing, and well, that's it really. So with just the mentality that Interplay had going into Fallout Brotherhood of Steel with Korn and Linkin Park on repeat, I scoured the Nexus to try and build the ultimate classic New Vegas experience. I really just wanted to see if we can make New Vegas look and feel like some of those first-person Fallout 2 videos. And I think we got pretty close. As a quick clarification before we get into it though, there's been no editing tricks here. What you're seeing is exactly how the game runs with just these mods and a CRT filter on Reshade. But with all that being said, let's get into it.
Yippee-yay, there'll be no wedding bells for today. I got spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle,
Jingle jangle,
as I go riding merrily along.
jingle jangle,
And they sing, oh, ain't you glad you're single?
jingle jangle,
And that song ain't so very far from wrong.
jingle jangle.
Oh, Lily Bell,
Oh, Lily Bell,
oh, Lily Bell.
oh, Lily Bell.
Though I may have done some fooling, this is why I never fell.
This turned out, to be honest. I tried my hardest to capture the feeling that those intro FMVs for Fallout 1 and 2 had, but we should probably cover the main mods here that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. New Vegas Unloaded by Wall and Sounds Degraded. The former really helps us with defining the visual style we're going for, allowing us to make the game go from, well, this to this. Thankfully, it's really easy to do with just tweaking some of the INI settings. For example, stuff like the decreased color depth is going to introduce a lot more banding in the textures, which is where the colors just don't really smooth or blend together that nicely. And decreasing the render scale helps of course, but that's kind of dependent on what resolution you're playing at. With the latter being a great mod to pair with Unloaded. Unfortunately, it wasn't out at the time I made my original video, but this is basically going to make everything sound a lot crunchier, and not in the good way. Weapons, music, and even the voice acting here have all been bit crushed, which just really helps sell that sort of vibe that we're trying to create here that much more. These are basically it though. If you want some fog to really help make that low draw distance feel more authentic, then Dusty Distance Redone is gonna help hide some of the distant LOD. I did notice though that with these mods installed, the dialogue depth for field effect was a bit weird with the setup, but thankfully we can just use something like this mod which will remove it.
What can Easy Pete do for you?
Weather mods were something that I really debated using. Unloaded will make the vanilla skies kinda look like you're playing Minecraft. so installing one to get rid of that alone was kind of a no-brainer. But the issue then came as what one should I use? Desert natural weathers would be an obvious choice, but running it with dusty distance with a fog setting as high as we do kinda makes it look like we're playing Silent Hill on the PS1 with how white the fog is. So I decided on Weather Revised, because when looking back at some of the old pre-rendered cinematics from the franchise, they really aren't as dark and gritty as you might have been led to believe. There's some nice blue skies here, and Weather's Revised lets us achieve that without changing the colours too much from the vanilla game. That's really all you need though to make your New Vegas instantly feel like it came out a whole lot earlier. But of course, that's not all that's here. You probably noticed that the intro also changed. This was actually a bit of cut content, or more probably leftover content. A version of the pre-rendered intro cinematic is present in New Vegas, and it is slightly longer than what it ended up being in the final game. And we can reintroduce this with New Vegas Uncut 8, Welcome to the Fabulous New Vegas. Now, I didn't really want to use this mod because, well, the Uncut series is kind of old and it is a little janky, but unless I missed it, I couldn't find another mod that adds this in, so maybe just the jank adds to the charm even more. Thankfully, the audio from this is also covered by Sounds Degraded too, so overall it just ends up coming together really nicely.
Friend, you look like you could use a sarsaparilla.
After that, we wake up in Doc Mitchell's, which looks a little different from how you remember it. That's because this is how it looks with Brayduk's No Sleep Till Goodsprings, which changes a lot of the architecture in the settlement to be more in line with some of the adobe ones that we've seen with like Shady Sands. This redesigns both the interiors and exteriors of your favourite locations, so Doc Mitchell's, Chet's General Store, and even the Prospect Saloon here have all been overhauled, with some of the other buildings in the area also seeing changes. This is a sort of theme I wanted to carry on throughout the Wasteland, so I downloaded basically every Adobe overhaul for notable locations like the 188, the Mojave Outpost, but the coolest really were Adobe Bonnie Springs, which with another mod that we're going to get to later, really makes this area feel like a sort of tribal village. And then Camp McCarran comes with these really cool laser doors like what Vault City had in Fallout 2. And then finally, classic Adobe Searchlight, which really makes this area feel a lot less run down than it did in the vanilla game, but keeping that creepy atmosphere. So it really feels like the whole radiation incident here didn't happen that long ago. Now, the subtitles are kinda big, but honestly it's sort of what I was going for. And thankfully they were really easy to set up. All I needed to do was increase the size of both the subtitle and ambient dialogue in Dynamic Ambient Dialogues INI, which is a really cool mod that basically completely overhauls how the subtitle system works, and it introduces that over-the-head text that NPCs had in Fallout 1 and 2 as well. For the font itself, I was initially going with like just some of the classic ones on the Nexus, but after doing a bit more digging, I really wanted to use Fallouty from Van Buren, which is this one here. It's not the exact same as the classic font mods that are on the Nexus, which are a lot more boxy with their text, and unfortunately my attempts to do this didn't go so well. But after searching, I found that True Classic Fallout Fonts 2.0 exists on ModDB, which is basically exactly what I wanted. You will need to open it up in MO2 and change some of the files so they're not set to MO hidden, but after that you can just load up your game and have these fonts without needing to change any INIs. For the actual main HUD though, I feel as though a lot of the classic HUDs are just kinda too bulky for normal gameplay, and they just also don't really look all that good in my opinion. The Revelation MUX preset was the one I ultimately decided upon, because it did the best job of capturing the feeling of what an Interplay designed classic Fallout HUD on consoles would look like. Unfortunately, MUX doesn't allow you to set the colours of individual bars, and ideally we'd have the health being a light red with AP being green to match how it appears in Brotherhood of Steel, but oh well. This did require us also to pick up OX Toolkit so we could rearrange some of the elements like the subtitles so they wouldn't overlap with the ones from Dynamic Ambient Dialogue, and I did move some of the other elements like HP and AP bars to be a bit more centered, similar to how the Fallout 3 and New Vegas HUDs are slightly indented on the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game. For everything else though, I used Revelation Lite, which is a more updated and less buggy version of the old Revelation UI mod. But we can make the UI even more classic feeling with dynamic interaction prompts. It was really Oblivion that sort of pushed me to download this, as the hand reticle changing was really neat, and I thought, hey, classic Fallout has that when you hover your mouse over something. And would you look at that, there's a mod adding in the classic icons for prompts. With this, not only do we have a more Fallout 1 and 2 styled HUD, But with this selection of mods, it also doesn't take up 30% of the screen. B42 Descriptions is gonna be the final mod to really finish out our HUD collection. And it's a pretty nice novelty mod. It adds in those little bits of flavor text that would appear when you click on an item in Fallout 1 and 2, so for an extra bit of flair, I figured why not? So now, if you look over something, you'll get this little description of it in the corner of the screen. It was at this point though that I felt as if the loading screens from the vanilla game would look a little too out of place. So I decided to travel the Mojave, taking screenshots of whatever seemed interesting, overlaying some frames from the beta intro to give it that sort of film effect that one had going on, and yeah, I think they turned out pretty well. If enough people want it, I could upload it to the Nexus, I guess. I did make both 4x3 and 16x9 versions of this too, so yeah. Of course, this wouldn't be a true classic experience without adding some stuff from those games in. And something I noticed while making this video was just about how cartoony Fallout's art style really used to be. Especially if you take a look at Brotherhood of Steel or even Van Buren, the models there are really stylized. Was this due to technical limitations? Most definitely, but it's kind of weird seeing a Deathclaw look like this. And for as good as New Vegas and Fallout 3 translated some of the classic designs onto the 7th console generation, they unfortunately lost a lot of the more outlandish and cartoony ones for more gritty and realistic ones in their stead. Thankfully though, we can of course fix this by adding in some of the classic designs into our game. So classic Fallout weapons remastered will flesh out our level lists with some weapons from those games, allowing you to use things like the revolver 10mm pistol and some of the more realistic weaponry that was lost in future entries of the franchise. This does come with a caveat though, that you will need to go through and bit crush the audio from these weapons, because some do come with custom sounds. Thankfully this is really easy to do as Sounds Degraded comes with a bat file that you can run, which will work as long as you have FFmpeg. Classic Robo Brains, Sentry Bots and Mr. Handys are mods that I would usually avoid, but with this visual setup they fit right at home. And for more of the creatures, we can install classic style retexture by Web. This helps bring a lot of the creatures in the game a lot closer to their classic designs. But for some of the more notable creatures, we're going to want to have Menace, Titans, and Horrors of the New West. Menace will cover super mutants, Horrors covers Deathclaws, and Titans of course covers power armor. Now, I have said before I'm not personally the biggest fan of Titans of the New West due to how it looks, but here alongside other classic enemies, it doesn't feel as out of place as it might do in a Vanilla Plus load order. Its new animations will also help bring that power armor fantasy to life, so it feels as game changing as getting one of these sets in Fallout 1 and 2 did, even if it is just a visual change. Nothing's cooler than being able to one-hand a super sledge after all. Honestly, the coolest mod and definitely the most recent one on here is Tribes of the Mojave. Although granted with our visuals it's kind of hard to show off, it makes both the Vipers and Jackals feel more unique than the sort of just generic enemies that they are in the vanilla game. Both get new outfits, headgear, and weaponry that helps them feel a lot more tribal than they do in the vanilla game, with each being tailored for their respective cultures. But even if you're just playing the game normally without any of these other classic mods, this is one that you should really just have. It makes them feel more unique, and it's something that the vanilla game really didn't do a good job at portraying. Of course though, we can't stop there. The goal of this is making it the ultimate classic mod list, so we need to add in some more classic gameplay elements. Skeletonizer will add in those over-the-top death effects for energy weapons, replacing both the normal ash and gooify effects. So now the NPC skeleton will kind of goofily stay there for a bit before hitting the ground in an ash pile. Radiant Infinium will add repeatable job boards to major locations across the Mojave. I wanted this to sort of recreate the feeling that going out on just Brahmin guard jobs had in Fallout 2, and this mod really is the best way to add menial tasks for you to complete whilst you wander around to build some caps. They can all be started at either a terminal or a job board, and these allow you to pick up either one or multiple jobs that will then be added to your Pip-Boy. These are all location appropriate too. For example, the terminal in the Mojave Express will only give you delivery jobs, and the job board in Camp McCarran will give you tasks to eliminate fiends and some other wasteland wildlife. There's a good variety too, and unlike the Radiant quest in Fallout 4, these are completely optional. You can just completely ignore these if you want. Although once you've discovered a good number of locations, Radiant Infinium does end up with you just fast traveling a good bit. So to keep that varied, Immersive Fast Travel Encounters adds in some text-based encounters that have a chance of occurring whenever you fast travel. The chance of these can be configured in the mod's INI, but what it does a really good job at is adding some risk to using the system. which is kind of why I opted for something like this whilst maintaining the vanilla fast travel system over something like say a JIP fast travel anywhere, which is a lot more similar to how the system worked in the classic games, but it's just a bit too unbalanced in my opinion. You can literally leave Doc Mitchell's, press 3 buttons and end up in New Vegas. So as a compromise, I settled on this. But if you do want a completely different fast travel system, maybe something like transponders would work, which adds in caravans at major settlements and allows you to travel with them for a small fee of course. This mod is really well done and it's integrated incredibly well into the game, and even comes with its own faction who have their own little Adobe settlement you can stumble across. And then the last mod here, which is really just the cherry on top, is Johnson's Enhanced Locomotion Remake. Purely because it adds in that little camera tilt when walking side to side, which was something I absolutely adored in Half-Life 1, so having it here feels just right. This is really it. If there's any mods you think I should add, be sure to let me know, because I'm sure there's something I missed. For those interested, I did all of this using Viva New Vegas Essentials as a base, and the reshade just adds in a pretty simple CRT effect, and a LUT as well. With that actually being what I use for all of my videos in New Vegas, it's the LUT 1 Tungsten to Daylight 1B from Reactor EMB for Fallout 4. But if you want to know what this whole visual setup looks like without any sort of reshade effects, well, here you go. But with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed. This was an incredibly fun video to make, and one that I wasn't planning on making at all. I was going to do a long form video on Burning Springs, sort of evaluating how it stands as a piece of Fallout content, but the servers were down when I went to go get some footage, so instead you got this, which I'm sure a lot of you would prefer. But don't worry, there will still be a video at the end of the month going over what I think have been the best releases from January, so get subscribed for that. And maybe consider liking the video too. Playing the game at 18 FPS for this was a massive pain. It really increased the loading time, so I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time.